Welcome to the Senate Chamber at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate, where you can experience a unique view of what it's like to be on the floor of the upper chamber of Congress. Very few people are allowed on the floor of the United States Senate Chamber in Washington, D.C., and just over 2,000 people have ever served as U.S. Senators. Even family members of senators might only ever experience the chamber from the Visitors Gallery, where people from around the world come to see American democracy in action. But at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate in Boston, Massachusetts, students and members of the public can debate a bill on the floor of our full-scale recreation of the Senate chamber and get a sense of what it's like to steer a democracy from the seats of power. This is the Institute's recreation of the room the Senate has been using to pass legislation since January 4th of 1859. Our desks employ the design used in 1819 after an even older Senate chamber was rebuilt following the War of 1812. Here you can see the dividing aisle that separates the Democrats and the Republicans. At the start of a new session of Congress, desks are often moved from one side of the aisle to the other to reflect changes in the chamber's party makeup. In the early 20th century, the Senate formalized the roles of the Senate majority and minority leaders. These leaders for both parties sit up front, next to their assistant leaders, who are also known as party whips. The Senate leader whose party has the most seats in a given session of Congress is known as the majority leader, and their counterpart across the aisle serves as the minority leader. The majority leader and their party are largely in control of what measures make it to the Senate floor. The rest of Senate seating is by seniority. At the start of every new session of Congress, the Senate Secretary asks senators where they'd like to sit, and the longer they've served, the quicker they get asked. While many long-serving senators choose to sit near the front, as Senator Ted Kennedy grew in seniority, he often chose to sit in the back row, near the benches where Senate staffers are seated. Behind the senators' desks are the Senate cloakrooms, private rooms where senators may discuss strategy. One cloakroom is reserved for the Republicans, and one for the Democrats. But senators and their staff are not the only ones working in the chamber. A portion of the Visitors Gallery is reserved for members of the press, but unless they're part of C-SPAN, journalists are not allowed to bring any recording devices into the chamber other than paper and something to write with. Back on the Senate floor, beneath the press gallery, is the Senate rostrum or dais, where nonpartisan chamber staff keep the whole thing running. Behind the rostrum is the desk for the Vice President, who also serves as President of the Senate. More often than not, members of the Senate substitute for the Vice President. The senator chosen as the president pro tempore, or pro tem, will often schedule a roster of senators in the majority party to preside over the Senate in the vice president's absence. The Senate has party secretaries, too. Directly in front of the rostrum are tables for the Democratic Party secretary's staff and the Republican Party secretary's staff. Senators who have just entered the chamber can come to their respective party's table to catch up on the latest business. Here, in the well, senators will often mill about, discussing matters with their colleagues as they wait for the legislative clerk to call their names so they can cast their votes. And of course, the chamber and its workings are just part of the many functions and offices of the United States Senate, which is just one half of a bicameral Congress. The Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate is proud to serve as a site for civic engagement and reflection, with a special focus on this unique legislative body. We hope you'll join us in our work to examine the Senate's past and present and to help shape its future within our democracy.